Hello students, welcome back to our class. We were dealing with the lesson plant physiology, and in that we have already covered about the seed structure and its function, and then we have already covered about pollination and fertilization, that is germination of the seed. Now we are going to start with the physiological processes that happens in an embryo and then how it develops into a complete plant. So we have dealt with the seedling development. Now we will discuss about the physiology processes. The very first physiology process which we are going to deal is the respiration. So respiration in plants we are going to discuss. Like all other organisms, plants do require energy for carrying out body activities. We know that very well that in order to carry out all the necessary functions required by the body for like locomotion, for having any kind of physical activity, you need energy that is coming from the digestion of the food. It liberates energy, right? So same goes the concept for the plant also. For its all necessary metabolic functions, it requires energy. Here in this session, we will be learning about two kinds of respiration, that is aerobic and anaerobic respiration process. The manner in which diffusion of respiratory gases occurs, as well as a number of interesting experiments to demonstrate respiration in plants. So in totality, this chapter is going to include the types of respiration, and then we will be dealing with the number of various experiments which will prove the conditions required for the respiration, like oxygen is required, water is required, or water and carbon dioxide is released. All these experiments we will be dealing in the last session of this lesson. So let's start. What is respiration? All living cells in a plant as well as those in animals, they require energy, right? For example, building up of proteins from amino acid, making starch from glucose. These proteins and starch are biomolecules that are made up from the building block units as amino acids and glucose, that are respective proteins and carbohydrates only. They absorb minerals from the soil or the laying down of cell walls by the plant cell. They are all such activities which requires energy. These activities are performed in a body of a cell. Body is here plant body of a cell. So that cell requires energy, and that energy comes from different activities, that is this respiration process. The energy is made available by the breakdown of glucose, that is the food, as a simple carbohydrate. This chemical breakdown occurs by utilizing oxygen and is represented by this overall equation. So glucose formula is C6H12O6, and when it comes in contact with the oxygen, that oxygen comes through respiration. So when this oxygen reacts with these glucose molecules, it causes its metabolic oxidation, and then it releases its constituents as carbon dioxide and water vapors, and then energy is also accompanied along with the formation of these products. This is the energy which is going to take part in several metabolic processes. There are three important characteristics of respiration in the equation which you just saw. That first is the breakdown of glucose to carbon dioxide and water, right? And it doesn't occur in a single step but in a series of chemical steps. There are several cycles involved in the digestion, or you can say breakdown of glucose during respiration process. The first cycle involves is the glycolysis. Although at this level you do not need to know exact structure and the steps required in a particular cycle. That is a part of your higher class. So glycolysis, glyco means glycogen only, lysis means breakdown. So there is a breakdown of a glucose here into pyruvate, that is an acid, or it is also known as pyruvic acid, which occurs in the cytoplasm of the cell, and then it is Krebs cycle that happens after glycolysis. But before that, pyruvate also converts into an acetyl coenzyme A part, then it enters into the Krebs cycle, where this pyruvate along with that first gets converted into, ultimately the carbon dioxide and water molecules and ATP energies are released, occurring in the mitochondria of the cell. Mitochondria of the cell is also known as the powerhouse of the cell because it generates energy in the form of ATP. ATP full form stands for adenosine triphosphate. Then the second step, or the second aspect of this respiration process which you can see, is that each breakdown step is due to a particular enzyme. Even if it is a glycolysis or a Krebs cycle, each step is accompanied by the role of an enzyme which releases a particular product. Like first glucose gets converted into glucose 6-phosphate, then glucose 6-phosphate gets converted into fructose 6-phosphate. These are just one of few steps which I am discussing here that happens in the glycolysis cycle. So All those steps or products formed at each step is not formed as on their own. They are accompanied by a particular enzyme. The energy liberated in the breakdown of the glucose molecule is not all in the form of heat, but a large part of it is converted into chemical energy, that is in the form of ATP, which is a chemical substance, and the formula or the full form is the adenosine triphosphate. When energy in the form of ATP is used, the ATP is converted to ADP, adenosine diphosphate, and again when more energy is available by further breakdown of glucose, the ADP is reconverted to ATP, and so it goes on and on. So in this, what is happening, there is a cycling of a ATP into ADP, ATP into ATP, that keeps on continuing on account of the amount of energy required by the plant body cell. So here is simple flow chart is indicating that breakdown of food glucose in respiration process takes place, and it releases CO2 and water, and this energy it enters, and it is what causing the some part is lost as heat and some part is involved in the formation of a chemical energy, that is chemical energy of bonds in the ATP. So this ATP and ATP cycle keeps on continuing. What happens that one molecule of phosphate is lost, then it gets converted into ATP, and that ATP energy which is formed is utilized in the functioning of any kind of work. So from total, it is said that one molecule of glucose is expected on complete oxidation yielding 38 molecules of ATP. That is the number which you need to remember also. ATP in brief, if we discuss, it is the energy currency of the cell because it provides energy to the cell. All activities inside a living cell need energy, which is available in the form of ATP only as the immediate source. Hence, this chemical compound ATP is described as the energy currency. So, if it is why ATP is considered as the energy currency of the cell, you can write these statements. Respiration is a catabolic process. Catabolic means there is a breakdown of glucose substance into CO2 and water, and the energy of releasing energy from simple sugar glucose for carrying out life processes. Living organisms, they show two types of metabolic activities, that is anabolic and catabolic, and they together constitute the metabolic functioning of any plant body or any body functioning of a living organism. Anabolic involves constructive or biosynthesis process where simple substances will combine together to form a large macromolecule. That macromolecule will be utilized in the cell processes. That consumes energy also. Whereas in catabolic, which is considered as the opposite of anabolic process, and it involves destructive or breaking down of the substances to release energy for use by the organism. Respiration is a breaking down process by which a living cell oxidizes organic substances, glucose, and releases CO2, water, and energy. So it's a complete definition also written again in this form that it is a simple catabolic process. If you compare respiration versus burning, burning is also known as combustion. So what is the main difference? Sometimes respiration is compared with burning, such as burning of coal. Both liberate energy, there is no doubt about it, and both give the end products carbon dioxide and water, because both are, one is acting on an organic substance and other is involving another organic compound. So all our organic compounds are your hydrocarbons only, that is carbon, hydrogen, oxygen composed compounds. But this comparison is only superficial or superficial. The differences between the two are that respiration occurs in a series of chemical steps, whereas burning occurs in a single step. You have seen that respiration involves a lot of different cycles like glycolysis, Krebs cycle, all these are involved. And then respiration involves different enzymes also at each step of the cycle, whereas in burning it only involves heat. It's a respiration, if on the other hand, is a biochemical process because it is happening in a biological body, that is inside of a living organism, and it is acting on a chemical compound, that is glucose, to release out energy. But burning is a physicochemical process because it is acting physically in the physical environment on a chemical substance. Energy liberated as ATP and some form as heat also, but in burning process the major amount of heat liberated is in the form of heat and light. In respiration there is no light energy produced, whereas in burning and combustion there is production of light. Burning of coal, you can see easily visible through your eyes that there is light energy being produced. Respiration on the other hand is a cellular process. Burning combustion is a non-cellular process. It is not involving any cell. It occurs at body temperature, that is this respiration process, whereas burning combustion occurs at high temperature at ignition point of a substance. Ignition point or ignition temperature of a substance is that substance at which that substance will catch a fire easily. The entire plant respires during respiration process. Plowing or tilling of the soil, it creates tiny air spaces around soil particles and it provides the source of oxygen for the root. So till now we were discussing about the single cell or all the cell on the other hand are involved actually. So in a plant body, and that all are involved in respiration, but here now we are saying that all plant structures, even a single root cell is also involved in respiration. And how it is happening? During plowing or tilling, it creates tiny air circulation, agitation happens which causes the movement of air particles, and air particles are nothing but your oxygen for the roots. Waterlogged and compact soil, it doesn't have air spaces because of this damping conditions which affect the respiration of roots. During daytime, due to photosynthesis, the leaves produce oxygen, some of which is used in respiration and rest is diffused out. So the carbon dioxide produced during respiration in the leaves, they serve as the raw material for the photosynthesis. This also you have learned in photosynthesis process that due to photosynthesis there is a production of oxygen gas, and that oxygen is used in the generation of the carbon dioxide during respiration process, right? And in the leaves only, so they serve as a, or for leaves if we talk about, oxygen is serving as a process or the raw material for photosynthesis. This carbon dioxide is serving as a raw material for the process of photosynthesis and respiration process. At night, even the leaves, they obtain oxygen from the atmosphere and they give out carbon dioxide. Hence, there appears to be some truth in the belief that one should not sleep under a tree at night. So it is also said that one should not sleep under a tree, not because of the spirit but because of this process that is happening, because it is going to release lot of carbon dioxide. But actually there is more carbon dioxide inside our houses than under a tree at night. Sleeping under a tree during hot midday is definitely good, as one gets both oxygen due to photosynthesis and coolness due to transpiration as well. Now, after discussion of how the energy is being generated through respiration, now the types of respiration, that is aerobic and anaerobic. So aerobic respiration, normally free oxygen is used in respiration, and there is complete oxidation of glucose with the formation of carbon dioxide and water as end products. So in aerobic respiration, it signifies that there is a role presence of oxygen for the degradation of the compound, that is carbohydrate glucose. So when oxygen is completely available, it will give you carbon dioxide and water as the end products along with the energy. This is clearly represented by the equation which you have just seen earlier also, and energy as 38 ATP molecules are generated. So now it is being transformed or written in this manner also. So again there are numerous steps involved, we have already discussed that. Respiration proceeds only when oxygen, which is a constituent of air which is present 21% in concentration, is available and is therefore called aerobic or oxybiotic respiration. Then anaerobic respiration, sometimes certain parts of the plants including fruit and seeds, they may temporarily respire even in the absence of the oxygen. These are those parts of the plant that are involved in the development of the embryo on the whole, right? Fruit is developed from the ovary of the plant, whereas seed develops from the ovule. So during their role is actually continuously taking place where they require oxygen. But when there is a atmospheric condition available where oxygen is not available properly, then also they do not stop their metabolic processes. They respire then even in the absence of the air. In this type of respiration, then glucose molecule is incompletely broken down because there is an incomplete combustion of the substance or incomplete oxidation of the substance, that is glucose here. So in plants, this incomplete respiration process or anaerobic respiration process, or you can also call it incomplete oxidation, breakdown of glucose, is into ethanol, which is an alcohol, ethyl alcohol is its common name, and carbon dioxide with the release of small amount of energy. Why small amount of energy? Because glucose is not completely broken down into its simpler substance, carbon dioxide and water. It is broken down into one of the another organic compound, that is ethanol here. So major amount of chemical energy that is stored in the glucose as ATP is not being released, is being utilized in formation of ethanol, which is still storing amount of energy. So that is why the whole at the end of the process of anaerobic respiration in plants, a small amount of energy is released. This chemical reaction can be represented as that. So for aerobic respiration, you have seen glucose and oxygen react together to give you CO2 and water plus 38 ATP, right? So anaerobic respiration can also be formulated in the form of a chemical equation as that glucose here, no oxygen, okay? So it undergoes breakdown and gives you ethanol, C2H5OH and CO2 and plus 2 ATP molecules are generated. ATP is the energy, so do not get confused that what is that structure. This type of respiration is then called as anaerobic respiration or anoxybiotic, as it proceeds even without oxygen. Anaerobic respiration in any part cannot continue in a plant for more than few days, otherwise the plant ultimately dies off. So plant requires oxygen for its proper functioning. This anaerobic respiration could take place for a small duration of time, that is for few days only, but not for a long duration. But there are certain microscopic organisms such as certain bacteria and fungi which normally respire only anaerobically. So these are known as anaerobic microorganisms, and they have been developed or systemized their machinery in such manner that nature has allowed them, or they have adapted themselves or are born along with the initial point only, that where they are capable of existing in an oxygenic environment. So they respire anaerobically. When even the germinating seeds, when deprived of air, they respire anaerobically. So the difference between aerobic and anaerobic respiration could be formulated as that aerobic respiration proceeds in the presence of oxygen. It proceeds in the absence of oxygen, that is anaerobic respiration. Aerobic respiration involves complete breakdown of glucose. Anaerobic respiration involves incomplete breakdown of glucose, and that turns into ethanol and CO2. So aerobic respiration end products are your CO2 and water, and anaerobic respiration end products, as I already said, ethanol and carbon dioxide. Energy liberated in a large quantity in aerobic respiration. 38 ATP molecules are generated from one molecule of glucose breakdown, whereas one molecule glucose breakdown gives out 2 ATP molecules in the anaerobic respiration. Aerobic respiration occurs throughout the life of an organism, whereas anaerobic respiration occurs for smaller duration of time in the body of a cell. So with this we will wind up the session where we have covered the general introduction of how plants show respiration process and what are the types of respiration. In the next session we will be dealing with the several experiments that are used to signify the process of respiration, that is what are the different conditions involved and how these things affect the respiration process. So do attend that session and revise these topics that have been taught to you today. We'll meet again. Thank you so much.